All right, moving on in our lecture about the deity of Christ, the first kind of proof I want to introduce is the fact that this person of Christ is said to have the property, the incommunicable property of absolute eternality, that he never began to exist. And there's a couple of really good arguments to support this. For example, the prophecy of the coming of Christ in Micah 5:2 says, the one that is coming that's going to be born in Bethlehem is, quote, from everlasting, okay? And that's significant because we see that kind of language, again, I've got the Hebrew there for you, the mime olam language is virtually identical to Psalm 90 verse 2, which says, from eternity to eternity thou art God. Because so in the Hebrew mindset, only God is from eternity. Okay, from their point of view, they think about eternity past. He never began to exist. While we begin to exist, we might be to eternity and have this ever-increasing number of moments of temporal succession that we experience. It's a potential infinity that's ever growing in our human experience. God is just from eternity, and he's to eternity. Okay, so that's why it's an interesting way of describing the one who's going to be born in Bethlehem is that he is from everlasting or from eternity. Then, again, skip down to some of the New Testament evidence that we look at, because it's important here we think about how this relates to the concept of creation. So we've got a couple of verses here that are going to come together. Remember that a text like Isaiah 44:24 says, Yahweh stretched out the heavens by himself and laid out the earth all alone. So again, a text like that makes it crystal clear that Yahweh or Jehovah, Yahweh particularly, the God of the Bible, is the only creator of heaven and earth. There's nobody else that participated in that. In fact, Jeremiah 10:10 and 11 talks about the false gods that did not create the heavens and the earth. So that's significant that if you were, again, the creator of heaven and earth, you are Yahweh and vice versa. Now that's significant for divine eternality because in Jewish and Christian monotheism, the only thing that exists prior to the first moment of ex nihilo creation is God himself. There are no angels, there are no planets, there are no human beings, there's just nothing. So the only thing that exists prior to the first moment, again, of creation out of nothing, the beginning of the act, is the eternal self-existent God who has always existed. Okay, so that's why marking that in our argument is significant. So when we get to a text like John 1:1-3, and I have an entire handout on this, which I can't take the time now to go through, but I have about a 2 or 3 hour lecture, maybe I'll supplement it in the future, where we do the exegesis and deal with the objections of John 1-3. But John 1:1-3 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being by him, and apart from him, nothing has come into being that has come into being. Now, that's significant because if you diagram that passage, which I've got a handout on this, which you'll see, if you diagram the passage, in the beginning was the Word. There's clause A. So the in the beginning directly parallels the first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I give a number of reasons why that this, again, that phraseology, in the beginning, NRK, in New Testament Greek, which is, again, same phrase as in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, both starts out in NRK. There's no definite article, and it's basically bringing up the idea of in the beginning, okay, what? God created the heavens and the earth. So in that beginning, the beginning of creation, why would we think that for John 1:1-3? Because not only is it a statement of Christ's deity, it's a statement that he's the creator. Remember, John 1:2, he was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being by him. All the things that have come into being are by the agency of the Son or the Logos here. So again, it's a creation statement, so it should bring us back to, for good arguments, the idea that in the beginning relates to, again, the beginning of creation. So it's significant that in the beginning was the Word, okay? Imperfect to the verb to be. So what we've got is a sort of continuous action, past time, state of existence or being, where this logos, the word mentioned, is now prior to the first moment of creation. And I don't want to get into temporality or atemporality or whatever. I'm just going to say before the first moment of creation. In the beginning, the word already existed or already was, which puts him before the first moment of creation, which only one thing exists before that moment, and that's the self-existent eternal creator. Okay? So he is before the beginning of these things. And then, again, the word was with God. So again, on that, again, now we have a person that we see in John 1:14 becomes the incarnate Christ. Now they're saying that he's with someone. He's with God. So that would eliminate right there the concept of modalism, because minimally, we look at the use of with God, he's proston theon. The idea of pros there is used, not soon, in New Testament Greek, in the sense that where soon is generally with someone, pros usually means to or towards, but with personalities, it means face to face. It's more of an intimate connection. So what we've got is two persons or maybe three face to face. The Logos is now with God, so that could be the Father and the Holy Spirit, or just considering his intimate fellowship with the Father. No modalism, okay? And then, of course, Theos ein ha Logos, the Word was God. And I get into a long explanation dealing with the Jehovah's Witness mistranslation, why it shouldn't be a God. Why? Because, again, in the appendix of the Jehovah's Witness New World Translation, the interlinear translation particularly, that I'll give you copies of for your own analysis, where they miscite, see, they're trying to make a case it should be translated a God, because when it says Theos ein ha Logos, Theos doesn't have an article with it. So they're making the case that it should be indefinite. The word was a God. But again, that's the problem of people trying to do these translations that haven't taken a lick in New Testament Greek, because again, here, the anarthrous noun is just a noun without an article, which can either be definite, indefinite, or qualitative, depending on the context. So definite, for example, the man. Indefinite, a man. Again, qualitative, emphasizing the qualities or properties, manness, okay, or man or human nature. Okay, those are the three ways you could, what is man that we might be mindful of him? The man went to the store. We have a particular one in mind. So hence we use of a definite article giving identity. Indefinite articles weren't in use in New Testament Greek, but indefinite means that you've got the class right, Homo sapiens, but a man could be anyone in the class. It's indefinite, okay? So definite, indefinite, qualitative. And again, you start sorting out the reasons why it should be considered qualitative, which is interestingly enough, because the Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to argue that it can't be, quote unquote, the God, which, as I go into my handout, said, you're right, you're not going to see it as, instead of Theos ein ha Logos, it's not going to be ha Logos, ha Theos ein ha Logos, because that would make it an identity statement, and that would make the Logos identical to the Father, which we just saw he was separate from. So all that more for time for Greek later. But ultimately, so they're trying to argue for indefiniteness, but in their own article, they quote an article from the Journal of Biblical Literature in 1973, Philip B. Harner, where they say where the anarthrous predicate preceding the verb is primarily qualitative in meaning. It means the Logos has the nature of Theos. Therefore, the predicate Theos cannot be considered definite. That's actually quoted in their own appendix. So in their own appendix, they quote an article that says it's not definite, it's qualitative, and what it means is the Logos has the nature of God. Okay? Oops! So of course later on they get rid of that appendix, and in their book, Should You Believe in the Trinity, this is the dishonesty of, if you want to call it, scholarship in the Watchtower. In their book, Should You Believe in the Trinity, they talk about Journal of Biblical Literature with no specific reference anymore, and they say now, with the anarthrous predicate preceding the verb, it's primarily qualitative in meaning. And then they cut the quote there, and in their own words, they say, it means the Logos can be likened to a God. And then they pick up the quote again and says, there's no basis for considering the predicate Theos as definite, close quote. See, that's the dishonesty you're dealing with when you're dealing with Jehovah's Witness literature and leadership. That doesn't mean the average JW is dishonest. They believe what their leaders tell them. But again, this is why it's good if you're going to do cult ministry and deal with people like this. It's good to have originals on hand so you can show the changes in dishonesty on this. So again, what does it mean? It means exactly what the Jehovah's Witnesses quoted, that again, with the anarthrous predicate preceding the verb, primarily qualitative in meaning, that the Logos has the nature of Theos. He is God. He's a person who has the divine nature separate from the person of the Father. And he existed prior to the first moment of creation. So what we've got here in John 1 through 3, again, 3 out of the 4 categories of deity are present for the argument. We've got the fact that he exists in eternal pre-existence prior to the first moment of creation. In the beginning was the Word. Got it, okay? So eternal pre-existence, incommunicable attribute, he's God. No modalism, he's with God. The Word has the divine nature, Theos ein ha logos. Now we're calling him God, okay, in clause C. Then after it says that, it states he's our creator, which we see in Isaiah 44:24 is unique to Yahweh. So 3 out of the 4 arguments in no modalism you get from 3 verses in the Gospel of John. And so that's why you need to, especially as apologists, even though it's not required, at some point you've got to study the biblical languages and be able to do your own exegesis and really not have to rely on English translations, because the problem is that bamboozled, hornswoggled, whatever you want to call it. See, Jehovah's Witnesses can sound scholarly and present, oh, well, look, Greek, Hebrew scholars and Bible scholars agree with them. No, they don't. They're misciting the literature. But if you don't know enough about exegesis, you're going to be fooled by this. And that's how the Jehovah's Witnesses, who are sheep stealers like the Mormons, they get about 3/4, both groups get about 3/4 of the new converts from existing Protestant churches. See, they come to existing Christians and say, you're in the wrong church, we're a better church, we have new revelation, or your church got it wrong about Christ, you're in idolatry, blah, 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 okay? So this is why pastors minimally have to be trained in the original languages, so that when you do have a question, you can go back and very clearly sort this stuff out, and they can point out the misexegesis. In the next section, I'll bring up a couple other evidences for Christ's eternal existence, but this one's gone on long enough. See you in the next segment.